Hey friends, good evening. It's your old pal SVH here, coming at you with another daily nugget for Wednesday, March the 10th, 2021. And today is a little different. It's not coming from a book or anything, but this is what's called daily meditations. So these are some supplementary papers that were released by Hazrat Inayat Khan, or probably more than likely released after his passing. But this is the daily meditation for March 10th by Hazrat Inayat Khan. And I just thought this is a really great, it's just so good. And so I'm going to share it. It's it's a little bit of a commentary, so I'm not going to give too much commentary afterwards, but I'll still give my little interpretive, spiel about kind of how it spoke to me anyway. I should change that, because I'm not trying to interpret these. I'm not trying to, with the daily nugget and the phrases and the things, I'm not trying to really interpret these. What I'm really doing more is kind of just telling you kind of how they spoke to me. I try to kind of channel the original saying in its purity, as if I'm speaking to you just as the person that wrote it. I'm trying to share it with you in a way that Murshid is reading it to you through me. And in that carrying of that message at the moment, I have an impression that's made on me, which I then share to you. But an impression is made on you as well. And that's more important than the impression that's made on me. So I'm not in any way trying to, I said interpret, but I want to watch how I say that and word that, because we don't really try to interpret this stuff. It's really more of a letting it speak to you, letting it move over you in its own wave, and really open up something in you. So that's my hope with it. So hope to clarify that. So anyway, without further ado, today's daily nugget, daily meditations for March 10th by Hazrat Inayat Khan. The soul is an individualized portion of the all-pervading consciousness. It is undivided because it is the absolute being. It is completely filled with the whole existence. The portion of it that is reflected by a certain name or form becomes comparatively more conscious of the object reflected upon a portion of the all-pervading soul, which in reality is a universal spirit. The soul in itself alone is no other than consciousness, which is all-pervading. But when the same consciousness is caught in a limitation through being surrounded by the elements, in that state of captivity, it is called soul. I'll read it one more time. The soul is an individualized portion of the all-pervading consciousness. It is undivided because it is the absolute being. It is completely filled with the whole existence. The portion of it is that if it is reflected by a certain name or form becomes comparatively more conscious of the object reflected upon a portion of the all-pervading soul, which in reality is universal spirit. The soul in itself alone is no other than consciousness, which is all-pervading. But when the same consciousness is caught in a limitation through being surrounded by elements, in that state of captivity, it is called soul. Wow. So there's a lot of little nuggets in here. I guess I'll just start at the beginning. The soul is an individualized portion of the all-pervading consciousness. Wow. So we think of ourselves as a soul. And we think of soul connection and soul being connected to other souls. And then there's spirit, which is a little bit more, I guess in my own assessment of it, is a little bit more connective to all things than an individual soul. The soul is... Well, it says it right here. The soul is an individualized portion of the all-pervading consciousness. So when you think of the all-pervading consciousness, you think of what God is. You think of what the creative spirit is, or whatever your humble belief is in the beginnings or the origins of life. The Creator, in essence, was a consciousness, right? There's a consciousness that pervades all things. And this consciousness is individualized. It's individuated within the soul of the human being. So the soul is an individualized portion of the all-pervading consciousness. So we talk about Christ consciousness, or we talk about illuminated consciousness, or divine consciousness, or higher consciousness. These are all different grades of the same thing, really, because there is one all-pervading consciousness. The ether contains all that is. All the elements: the air, the fire, the earth, the water, all the different elements that we experience in life are experienced in the ether, which is carried out throughout the universe. And when you think about consciousness, now consciousness goes beyond that, right? Because consciousness formed all of that. So when you think about your soul being an individualized portion of the all-pervading consciousness, you realize how much power is within your soul, right? It's kind of like the saying by Rumi that, I'm not I'm not the drop in an ocean, but I'm the ocean, I'm not the drop in the ocean, but I'm the ocean in the drop. You drop a drop into the ocean. It has its okay, it started as a drop and it has its thing, but as it merges with the ocean, it becomes the ocean, right? It doesn't stay that little individual drop. Now, if it's somehow extracted back out of the hole, then it's a drop again. But when you drop that drop and it merges with the ocean, it becomes one with the whole vast network of water in the ocean. It's the same with the soul and the all-pervading consciousness. When we lift our soul to a level where we connect with that all-pervading consciousness, then our consciousness raises. So the consciousness within our physical being or within our own soul construct becomes part of that all-pervading consciousness. And in that is the store of all information, all truth, all reality. And by tapping into that, we have these higher experiences, right? So if you're in meditation, you're in a situation where your soul is connecting, it's reconnecting with the all-pervading consciousness that lies behind all the physical stuff that usually keeps us away from what we discover in meditation. Because in meditation, it's about getting in tune with the body, but then letting go of the body to where we rise up in consciousness to where we now are experiencing ourselves as spirit. And when we experience ourselves as spirit, we can then connect or collide with the all-pervading consciousness, which is one with all things. It flows through all things. So that's another thing to consider too that I take away from this is kind of jumping around a little bit, but going to the end. But when the same consciousness is caught in a limitation through being surrounded by elements, in that state of captivity, it is called soul. So our soul, in essence, is in a state of captivity because we are surrounded by elements that take us away from the reality or the realization of that higher consciousness within ourselves, that all-pervading consciousness. We forget that we're part of that. We think our consciousness is just us being awake or conscious, or, if somebody goes unconscious, they're not awake or they're not aware. Their mind is still working, their soul and their spirit is still floating around in some realm, but they're not physically conscious of it. So it's when we think about the all-pervading consciousness, we think about that thread of reality that goes through all things, that connects through all things. So it's just a lot of really powerful little nuggets in here. The portion of it is reflected by a certain name or form because comparatively more conscious becomes comparatively more conscious of the object reflected upon a portion of the all-pervading soul. Okay, so I think kind of what this particular section is alluding to is kind of like what we talk about in my Sufi path, is about the mirror of the heart. So the mirror reflects certain things that are put upon it, right? And if you're very focused, you're very concentrated, and you have a very clean mirror, you've polished that mirror every day through meditation and prayer and so forth, you're going to get a really clear, concise image of what's coming through from the all-pervading consciousness. So whatever it is that you're trying to pull out of this vast, I don't even know what the word is. It's beyond name, really, but this all-pervading consciousness that within holds all the secrets of life, all of the truths, all of the realities. When you have this clear heart and this clear space within yourself that you can reflect something from the all-pervading consciousness, it's more pinpointed, it's more precise, because it's one individuated thing that you're focusing on in that moment. And I think this is possibly what this is kind of alluding to, but it seems like they're talking about when a certain form takes on, this impression from the all-pervading consciousness, it becomes much more clear. So again, there's a couple of different things that this is telling us. It's, for one, reminding us that the soul is an individualized portion of the all-pervading consciousness, which in itself is mind-blowing. It's also telling us that within our own individuality, by keeping that clear heart, by keeping that purity of spirit, we can connect with that all-pervading consciousness and pull from it what we need and really pinpoint it and really focus on it in our own individual life. And we can reflect that in a way that makes it much more clear. Then I think the last part is just going on again to kind of remind us that the soul is no other than consciousness itself. So we see ourselves as an individual soul, which is true, but that soul is spirit, and that spirit is part of the all-pervading consciousness. So our individualized soul is a portion of the all-pervading consciousness. Just so powerful. But when the same consciousness is caught in a limitation by the elements surrounding it, in a state of captivity, that's where it's recognized as an individualized soul. So it's not about, trying to step out of your individuality or step out of your self and see yourself as non-existent or all those types of things. Not totally necessary. And there are those paths that, that we become nothing, and you live in that state of nothing and no being and no way. But I think here it's really more of talking about, being present to and with, conscious of our own consciousness being part of the all-pervading consciousness, and being conscious of the fact that our soul has all of the answers, all of the goals in life are there within the soul, because they're part of the all-pervading consciousness. But because we've been individuated into our own being, we've become separate from not only each other, but from that source and that all-pervading consciousness that is who we are. I mean, that's truly who we are. You want to talk about stepping out of the matrix and about getting out of this simulation that we're in. The way to do that is to really see yourself as all-pervading consciousness, and to experience yourself as all-pervading consciousness. You get into deep meditation, you do the right kind of breathing exercises, the right kind of practices, you can catapult your consciousness to other realms, other dimensions, to other parts of the universe, beyond our universe. And it's not just a mental thought, it's not just an imaginative thing, it's a reality. You can take yourself to these other realms, other dimensions, other places, by just being in tune with your own piece of the all-pervading oneness of all things. So, yeah, just a couple of deep thoughts on today's daily meditation, but I really like this one, and I just sometimes I'll share some different things and pull it from different sources, but I really like this one in particular. And I just felt it was very fitting today, because I think it's important for us to realize, so important for us to realize and remember every day. And as I said about the other day, having the mantra that, I see myself as second to none because I recognize in myself the one alone. This is so much in tune with that. The soul is an individualized portion of the all-pervading consciousness. So don't see yourself as this little soul that's stuck on the earth, dealing with all this shit that you're dealing with every day. You are actually a portion of the all-pervading consciousness. How big do you want that portion to be? Do you want it to be a little portion? Do you want it to be a big portion? That's up to you. It's how much you want to realize and how much you want to experience that all-pervadingness. That's up to us, and that's up to us to journey on our own experience, to go through our own path, to try to figure out, how far we want to go. And I've gone, fairly far in my life, and I have a lot farther to go. But man, I see it as limitless. I just want to keep on going. I just want to keep on experiencing more and more of that all-pervading consciousness, because to me, that's where it's at. When you really realize your oneness with the Creator, when you really realize your oneness with God and how God flows through all things, you see life differently and you experience life differently, and you start to really connect and manifest the things that you want and need in your life, because you're connected to the Spirit that creates it all. That's the creative spirit. That all-pervading spirit is the source of all creation, right? Because that's what created us. So think about that. The more you can tap into that, the more that you can relate to that as part of yourself, the more you can make that part grow. It's like an ember that you can blow on, and it's just going to get big and bigger and bigger until you got this raging blaze of soul consciousness, that is arising in you, that takes you to a whole new experience in life. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on today's Daily Nugget. I really appreciate everybody checking these out as always. Please do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button. If you're watching this on one of the super channels, I'd appreciate if you go over to youtube.com/thesvh, THESVH, and go ahead and subscribe to my channel as well. And I really appreciate everybody checking these out as always. And I will be back tomorrow with another Daily Nugget. Have a blessed night, friends. Amen.